Welcome. Welcome. It is I, Carl DeGregorio, desk session 95 coming at you. 95. 95 is a good year. I think it was actually a good year for wine. I don't know for a fact. I know 75, 95. I don't know if it all holds out like that. And then, of course, I guess, were bad years, and there were years where the crops got messed up again. And I don't know what year it was the year. I think it was in the 70s when the Chateau Montelena won the International Wine Snob Festival or whatever the hell it was. I don't know why I'm off on a wine tangent. I guess I just it was a very good year, right? And I may be wrong, but I do think 95 was a big year for wine. The 95 Petrus or some shit like that. There's some famous bottles that are 95. I probably had heard that in all my years in restaurants. But it is moving along. Again, the foregone conclusion is the 100 mark will be met because we are moving past that now. We are thinking about further on down the line. We are thinking about this as a thing we do, as a part of our week, part of our how I go about planning things, how I anchor myself to some time in I don't know if this is actually helpful for my mental health, but I do know that it is it's kind of oxymoronic, but it's a talking meditation, meaning I'm talking and I am meditating. It's probably more like a talking rumination. But I have noticed the sort of uptick in my screen time. And while this is technically screen time, it is screen time where I'm not interacting, I'm not absorbing content, I'm creating content. I am trying to put something out there, and it also is hours, an hour long of me just sort of, for whatever output it winds up becoming, it is me trying to stay in a creative space, in a zone of contemplation. And it is a journal, a vlog, that kind of thing, where I recount a week, if I can, vis-a-vis entertainment or creative pursuits. So, and I think that is the morph of the desk session, and it has been my passion for a long time, and maybe what I need to get back to and kind of go back to your rudiments, just like a drummer, just like a guitar player always starts with scales. For the creative myself, the scales for a writer and an actor, even a comedian, is the notebook. The notebook, the journal, the pen, the paper, the pencil, the paper, the desk, putting in the hours at the desk. It is the equivalent of a rehearsal room for a cellist. It is the equivalent to research in a lab, I would imagine. And so that's why it's the desk sessions, because I've always been fascinated, and part of my dream boarding has, I could do a whole dream board just on what a workspace, fantasy of what I want a workspace to look like someday. And the desk and where you put the desk. There are always those shows or movies where the very important father figure has an office with the hidden, what do they call those hidden doors that are the sliding doors that go into the wall, pocket doors, and they slide. Please don't come in here, kids. And it's usually a very rich mahogany desk and den and shelves and that kind of stuff, and the leather back chair. All that stuff is always very appealing to me. You can't really see it in these, but one of my prized possessions, and one of the keeper gifts and keeper. Knowing someone was a special person in your life was my my girlfriend managed to surprise me with an office chair desk for her birthday many, many years ago. I worked with a guy whose wife worked at Pottery Barn, and I knew I was always Googling like something known as a like a jury room chair. Those but they didn't have wheels or casters, but that wooden kind of swivel chair, but wooden and dark, and she found one there, and sure enough, she did a surprise where it was in the backyard of my apartment and out the back door, and she got the discount, and she got it for me, and I'm sitting on it today. I've added padding because now sitting hurts my butt and tailbone area. I've added padding. I've had to replace casters. I've snapped wheels. I've broken wheels. And thank God it has a universal caster, 2-inch caster wheels that you can get at a hardware store. But it's always been my thing is sort of a desk, an office space, how you construct your workspace, where your pens and pencils are. And it goes back, I think, to childhood. I had a very tiny, tiny room that is now, like many of us as adults, has become basically a junk drawer the size of a small room. But it was really small enough of a room that you could practically get both walls with your arms. And it was a narrow kind of place. And I craved solitude, and so the other problem with it is the closet was where all the towels were kept, and so people would come in to get a towel before a shower, and it would bother me as if I had no privacy. But I was a little kid, so I didn't spend too many years in that room. But it did have this miniature roll top desk, which I can see today, and I know that has been relocated up to the attic. It was a child's desk, but it was a roll top. And, a roll top is that thing that closes. I love that it closed, but when you open it, it also had like little, it had little shelving and pockets and little places to stick stuff. And for my child who loved little trinkets and baubles and, kept track of stuff, I just loved the desk. And it was missing a drawer, so it would have had a drawer, but it didn't have it. And I took I don't know if you remember when you would get it was never your favorite gift, but it was probably appreciated by the parents. You'd get these boxes back in the day, and they were clearly clothes, and you would be like, I want toys, but you would get clothes from your relatives, and it would be like in a Macy's box or a Lord and Taylor box. And back in the day, some of these boxes were really rigid, and they had tops, not just like, they didn't just fit into each other. They were literally a box with a box top. And I took the bottom half of that and I pushed that in to the little drawer space. The only problem was it didn't fit perfectly, and you couldn't put anything in it. But I just, it was like minding the gap. I just couldn't stand the gap, and I felt like there was something missing, so I put that there. But I've always fancied a roll top desk, and that whole, there was a time where I guess I could have helped my case a little bit better, but there was a time when the idea of maybe being more of an academic in college rather than going to a conservatory crossed my mind, and because I like sitting at a desk and writing, and the idea of being a student of letters was appealing to me, but I just couldn't shake the notion of my identity as an actor. And that's been an issue, not an issue necessarily, but like identity is where that comes from. What you identify as is it important? I don't know. Excuse me, you have to turn the AC off for these, and it's a little warm in here. But who am I? And all this stuff, and what you identify with, I guess, is we're finding out. I don't know. We're finding out. And what's important, is your resume who you are, or is your life and your loved ones? That's really who you are, right? And that's the battle, and I've kind of played chicken with my life as far as thinking I could enjoy it to the maximum without the quote unquote success I seek. And, there's some folly in that, I'll say, honestly. In equal parts, there's also still hope. I think it is important to keep things moving in a positive way, that you shouldn't pack up your tents, that you have time, that you're not, done for, all these, issues that we badger ourselves with. So it's an equal measure or not an equal measure. But as I've done some exploring, and even actually through the art of acting in my later years, and in my journey of trying to get optimal, which is basically fending off darkness in many cases. I guess it would be self-help or self-realization. Don't want to give it a label, but in my processes to try to help myself feel better, feel more empowered, feel more actually giving to rather than taking from my art, or to people in my life. The identity issues are, something to debate or to wonder about. And ultimately, all you have is the moment, and that applies to now in our lives. That applies to, I guess, great acting comes from the moment. And I think, the thing that we're learning through a lot of things in the ubiquity of cameras is that there's a process now. And we used to be mystified by the movie magic. We used to be mystified by how did they do that? How did the actor even do that? Now that is demystified. Everyone does it. Marlon Brando said that many times, that everyone is an actor, and that the minute you have to sugarcoat your feelings by quelling disappointment and then saying, "Oh, I'm doing fine, thank you for asking," when you're sorrowful, that is an acting job. And he is right about that. And so the reason that some actors, and myself, the reason that there is an animus toward actors per se, is people don't think it's difficult. They'll give obviously a master on an instrument will get credit for their mastery of the instrument. Great singer, even a great comedian, the learning curve, or the level of difficulty of daring people to judge you, daring people, giving you only a microphone, but an actor has got makeup and lines, and all they're quote unquote doing is saying words. But that's what we know is not. But what I'm saying is, what Brando is saying is that we've demystified it. And so now to surprise anybody is very difficult. And so what is required now is some of the best acting moments that would happen on a set might not make the cut. And that is a hard pill for an actor to swallow, knowing that that was their best take, and that the director had to make an edit, or the editor had to make a decision to use a better take, or they're not on you. They're not covering you when you know that that's your great moment. You can hear it in the voice, but it's just an over the shoulder, and your moment where you were most dropped in is on the other face. That happens a lot. And so what happens is, and what is the cool part about the acting career, is that everything I do between auditions and dealing with my agent and now headshots and all that stuff, that is what the gig is. That's the acting business. And some of it is torturous, and most of it's pretty interesting it keeps my attention. I've been on, little short film sets and some on real sets where it's a little more pressurized when it's the bigger it gets. But I've been on sets where the crew was like, "Wow, great performance, dude." And you don't usually get that interaction, but who knows if that's the take they used. And I'm hearkening back to a memory of the particular shoot where I was digging a grave, literally. It's that kind of mafia thing where they make you dig your own grave, and cliche as it may be, they had some budget. We had a crane arm, and I didn't have to dig it. The crew dug it, and then there was loose dirt that I could move around and make it look like I was completing a task. And my acting was in acting like I'd done like a 4-foot shallow grave, and then all that. But the retakes, all of it, and the effort, and the fact that I was the only one with like a physical action that day, and everybody else was just chilling. My resentment, I built on that, and I put that into the scene, and so it wasn't acting, right? And that's where you're after that, where you don't have to act, where there's no artifice, and you don't. Sometimes you got to tell the story. Sometimes the light went out. Sometimes that part, and they make do with it. And that's probably, if you notice, where you might zone out when you're watching something. If you can put your phone down, put your laptop down, all those things we're competing with. Another thing Marlon Brando mentioned or is attributed to is that he said his job was to get your attention so that you would stop putting popcorn in your mouth and just watch the movie, right? Now, the acting job that is required is to get you to put your phone down while you're looking up my credits, or to put your laptop down while you're checking your stocks, or to get you to not be split screening on the TV. There's a million interruptions to what gets between you and the person viewing it, and all the effort that goes into it for it to be ignorable. It is the big fear. But what a challenge, what a challenge. And I guess that's where it's at, is that we have to challenge ourselves. And one thing I did notice this week, just on a purely technical week, this is like sort of some of the embarrassing stuff. I talked about it last week. And I went on a rant last week, and I didn't feel great about. Here's how I know a session didn't go so well, is that there was a week when I was talking about the Knicks, which was an exciting thing, which was an inspiring thing that I took into the whole last few months as far as inspiring me, and that it reflected in my desk session. And this week I didn't have that, and although the World Cup is very stunning as an event, and I needed to have latched onto that, but I had. It was basically a complaining session, and a reason I know a session wasn't as great as a previous one per se is when I have to find a less than a minute clip, a 30-second clip to put up on socials to sort of be a loss leader to get people here. I could barely able to find anything, and previous weeks I had upwards of 3 per week. The week previous I found 3 clips because I felt good about the session. I felt good about what I was saying. I do understand how the algorithm works, that the more I post, the more, and I don't want to get too caught up in it, but I posted 3 separate clips from the same desk session instead of hoarding it for another week, which might have been a smart move. And this week I could only find 1 to post. And who knows? Who knows what it'll be today or what will come out of this one. But I was ranting and raving about AI, which I probably will continue to do, but maybe not this week. But because something which was still aided and abetted by technology, but something that I probably have to reconcile with is having not been born with it and having to see the difference for people who only know digital and email and texting and phones and all that. People only know that you can't tell them that they're growing up in an unnatural world. They're growing up in a natural world progressed from the world that it used to be. You could decide to heat and light your house with kerosene. You could, right? But it would be a real pain in the ass. It would be holding on to something less helpful, and you probably can go back to doing that in an emergency situation, but anybody in the days where they saw their winter's amount of protein rot because they didn't know how to salt it properly would not begrudge a deep freeze so they could put all their deer meat, like, and they could survive the winter with their protein. Like, they wouldn't begrudge that. And so I guess that's what I'm saying about people who are old enough to remember. Why would I begrudge some of the assets that are presented in these? And if it's the way the market is going or the world is going, to abstain is basically to abstain. And that's good in terms of you have issues with alcohol or some kind of abusive behavior. To abstain is fair enough, but it doesn't. I'm being distracted because I have a OCD thing, and I noticed something on my desk, and nope. Okay, beautiful. I have solved it. I got paranoid that someone might have been in my apartment because my parking passes are in LA. A lot of street parking requires permits, and I have the permits in a certain particular place, and they change every year, and you have to re-up on them, and they're different colors. And I looked over, and I only saw the one color, and I'm like, usually they're staggered, so you see the other. And I guess I was just tidying my desk because I sit at my desk and just sort of tinker, and I had to prove to myself that it was still there, and it is. And so now I can chill and keep a train of thought, even though that's a massive digression. And maybe if this ever got to a platform where I had a producer, they'd probably edit this part out. But getting back to a long-winded preamble with these new headshots, and I know this sounds like I'm belaboring a very simple thing, but I am trying to redress and readdress a previous standing and noticing where I get in my way, to be honest with you. Previous ways of getting in my way were living with so-so headshots, right? Not updating them enough. Not taking the time to think about them as a marketing tool, and putting everything on the hope and the dream that the agent would hustle me through. And again, this being the pre-days, that was probably fair enough to lean in on your agent. But when that agent goes bye-bye and you're left with your own devices, today, all the hustle stuff that we used to have to do via mail is made simpler, made easier, made... you can mass produce your own output. You can automate yourself. I mean, and all it really comes down to, the one cool thing about knowing how things were previous is some of this stuff is not less impressive. It's just scale, right? It's just scale. You no longer need to have, I forget how wide, but I think they were many feet wide, the spools of newspaper, blank paper. The spools were this big, and they went through the presses, and that's how, so the way they laid out the paper had to be on this template, and that's why they would say, I can give you a column, I can give you this many lines, because it was all templated, and then it was mass produced and sent out. Pictures in a box, and that's where the typesetting is basically where you would go to look at your Microsoft Word or whatever word processor. You'd pick a font, and now this stuff is all on your phone. So when I'm doing an Instagram reel and I want to put the captions, it does it automatically, which is a miracle. And then you can change the font. This all had to be done manually, and so they've even changed, because I think they wanted what happened with Apple is they wanted, and the computers, they wanted to take away your ability as a hardware person to customize, to extend lives. They want the built-in obsolescence. They want to sell basically a Bic lighter and not a Zippo, because a Zippo, you buy the fuel at a different place, you buy the flint at the Zippo, you only buy once. They want to make these things semi-disposable so they can get more units. Or there's a conspiracy about why they take the ports out, and they don't want you keeping storage and, one plug and all this stuff. And then they sell it as improvement and streamlining. But they also change the verbiage and the marketing tools, because back in the day, they used to call it desktop publishing, right? And so it was basically this miraculous thing got to be put in your hands, put in your house. So desktop publishing means you could print out your own shit. You know, you didn't have to go to Sir Speedy or Kinko's to get manuscripts. If you so wanted to burn out your ink yourself, you could print scripts out at home. You could do your flyers at home. You didn't, you know, it was desktop publishing, and now it is international publishing. That's why they call it, YouTube is a channel. You know, you get a channel. You know, this is public access on steroids, and it's a beautiful thing, and I need to embrace that, especially knowing what it was like before and how to present as an actor. And so these pictures that I used to sort of, it's just counterintuitive. And it's also the nonsense we all say, the nonsense that you spew that is counterproductive. I hate taking headshots. I used to say that all the time. Well, that's how you get an audition. And it's not about being pretty or being good looking. It's about you being specific to a type, looking like an interesting person that they might want to click on or open the envelope and say, huh, and then the resume. All of that's digital now. I haven't had to print a headshot in, I don't know, 10 years. I've literally had to like bring shit. It's embarrassing. The last time I had to get a headshot, I went to like a CVS. Excuse me. I went to a CVS and, you know, and then the thing didn't work, and then I had to go pay for it, and it's like some CVS worker's like, oh, cool, you got an 8x10 of yourself because you got one crazy casting director wanted to see a hard copy headshot. But to say I hate this thing, I hate taking these pictures, and the cool thing about where I'm going now is that they are right. They say, don't think of it like that. Think of it as a performance. We're going to perform. We're going to help you get these shots, but this is a performance. And then that wakes me up and says, wow, that could have been a way to phrase it a long time ago. This is the first performance an actor dares take. I'm going to perform for this still photo and imbue it with something that can set me up for auditions, and it's just a calling card. And so to hate it means to kind of hate part of what you have to do, and that in and of itself is at minimum ankle weights, right? And I need to not do that. And so I am still struggling. I am still trepidatious about basically the outlay of cash, the change. Like I said, I crashed my website because I anticipated this change. And then things started to happen with this website as it was being sort of helped. The guy who was helping me on the phone, he took some liberties, and I took umbrage. And now I'm starting to think that maybe he wasn't such, that this was sort of a happy accident. But I am also task oriented. It does help to have things on the calendar. And one of the things is, and it, you know, I'm raw faced here. I don't, men don't rock makeup very often, but if you're on a show, they will put you in the makeup trailer, and it's mostly for shine and probably for distracting blemishes and things like that, hair and makeup. And then this photographer's theory is don't do that. Just come and we'll clean it up in post or we'll digitally remove it. But I think that's asking a lot of the skill set of the person who's going to retouch the photos, and the less they have to retouch and the more the face. And so you know, it's not a very tough guy, but you got to get hair and makeup, and they don't provide it. And so I had to ask for a list, and you know, it was maybe too many to apply to all of them. So they all have a blurb, and like that, they're doing what an actor has to do, but their blurb is saying what they bring to hair and makeup. And some of them are only makeup, but then I was like, oh, let me see. This one's got a cosmetology. This one does hair. This one does hair too. And it worked out. But how it worked out was I got in touch with a few people one by one, and then saw their reply time, and I was very impressed with these artisans. And then this would be what I would say to people who are gleeful about the demise of Hollywood or the demise of LA as an entity for entertainment, as an export or as an industry, is that these artisans, these makeup artisans, they may be busier now outside of the realm of Hollywood because of social media, where maybe these influencers get their face done when they do taping, I'm sure they do if they don't know how to do it themselves. And so it may be a boon for the makeup artist and the hair. But if their real, bread and butter was working on a show, working on sets, working on headshots, if people, all of this stuff, I don't know. So I can't read into their response times, but their response times to a person was very quick, very cordial. One was available, one wasn't available, or two weren't available, and one was available. And then I needed their prices, and then their price was high for, in studio, and then another person was not available at my time, but I could have gone to her studio early and then, had the makeup done and then gone. And she goes, but I get it if you want to have on set. And then the one that I selected got back to me rather quickly, was available, and had a very reasonable rate and explained that I will go to the studio, we'll meet an hour before, and I'll stay with you a whole day and just powder your shit up. Which I can tell just from the reflection here that I need some powder, because it gets hot under the lights and they can't crank the AC. And so her enthusiasm and all of their enthusiasm was quite a thing to see. And I'm saying that's who you're besmirching, or that's who you're consigning to the trash heap when you gleefully watch an industry fade. If you're one of those people, some people are rooting for it, and some people are nihilistic, and some people are sure it's already dead. And I'm saying it isn't, or it is. I can't fix it. But the quality of people in all aspects of the entertainment industry is apparent to me. Hopefully it's me as well. But, makeup and hair people, that's a job. And if you're all about the economy and the job creating and all of that, then you can't be rooting against that, And anybody who's been on a set knows that the makeup trailer, the hair and makeup trailer, those are the coolest people. They're the most fun people to be around. The nurturers, the vibe is good. You sit there in the chair with you. Like, how could you be mad at that crew? And it's your first, and they're artists in their own way. And so, just how well responding they were. Some of them have templated responses and all their packages, and so one of them priced themselves out, and then this one that I settled. But one thing I did that I need to do, and this is all part of my new thing, is that I caught a break with that customer service rep who was a developer who got my site back and I haven't published it yet because I'm waiting for these new pictures. But he got me back on track, and he did a little developing on the sly, because he got me further along than somebody who would just have sold me a package. So I caught a break there. It wasn't free, but I caught a break as far as getting more than just the hosting, right? I just appreciate people who handle their business. And so the people who got back to me, but who I ultimately didn't choose, I got back to them to say, I really appreciate you getting back to me in a timely manner and your thorough reply. I just found another person who could do it a little cheaper. And then to the other person, I said, I found someone who could do in person for me. And both of them shot right back. One of them was like, fantastic. So glad to hear it. Next time. And then the other person was, have a great shoot. And then the one that I'm using, I said, do you need a deposit? Because one of the other ones was really adamant about not putting you on the calendar without a deposit. Maybe they've been burned, all that, et cetera, et cetera. This person said, don't worry about that. We can do Zelle, Venmo, blah, blah, blah. And I'll email you before, in between now and your shoot. All fantastic, and it's okay to have to pay. Like, none of this stuff should be free, because it's services. But how these services are rendered and how people handle their business, I don't know. It's a very small thing and maybe a banal thing to notice, but I think it is a lost thing, because things like Amazon, you can't get a human being on the track. And by and large, though, to their credit, they deliver, probably on the backs of people working too hard. But from the consumer point of view, but I like dealing with people, and I felt like I should get back to them, and I think they appreciate it. Also because, they want to move on, and it's also about keeping your calendar booked, And it gave me an insight into a freelancer's sort of stock and trade is being good at it first, presenting that you're good at it, and following through and moving on to next. But God bless these people the one person was so busy and unavailable that she was willing to squeeze me in at 8 a.m. before I needed to be, which is just money in her pocket. And she's trying to book herself out as much as possible, as I'm sure. So maybe they are feeling the pinch in that the only people needing makeup are the occasional, because the person who got back to me and who I chose was like, that's wonderful news. I'm excited to work with you. And maybe that's just good panache of sales, but it's good energy, right? It's good energy. And I I say a long time ago that my whole self-help journey, and I know that sounds pedestrian, but it really started when I decided to get Invisalign. And to get Invisalign, I had to basically go to a dentist and start the whole. He said, I can't just slap these things on an effed up mouth. There's a lot we got to do. I had to get wisdom teeth removed. I had to get deep cleaning. I had to get fillings replaced, and it was arduous. And then I had to live with the Invisalign for a year, practically, maybe just shy of a year, 10 months, something like that. But it was about me taking care of myself, taking care of how I present. And, that's all. Also, it's you. It's working on yourself, your health. A lot of these things, we're lucky to have survived our youth from crazy decisions that we may have made, but we didn't have to survive our youth because we were young and our bodies were resilient, and I could make it through. But once you understand that you have to take care of yourself, to enjoy your body, your life as you get older, it's the same thing with anything, is a constant maintenance, And so this idea of doing new pictures, but also not dreading it. And I still am hemming and hawing about what I'm going to wear, what the hell, and I don't want to deal with it, but I have to start to think that this is the start of something, And one thing the rep did on my website is, they're working, you're on the phone, but they're looking at your stuff from their, not screen sharing, but they are in the back door, or they're in the back of house of the website, so they see it. They can see it from their end. They can probably see it more than I can, because there was a bug that was making it. I couldn't even visit my site, but they could from their end and see where the glitches were. And so you do have a little chat about what it is. And now all of a sudden there's like this appearance on my website in my SEO that I'm an acting coach. And that struck me because I'm like, oh, I'm an actor and I just want to be an entity. But, I think he threw that in there, gleaning from my site and putting that out there. And that's a searchable term. And if I pop up, I certainly have done it in the past and hope to do it again. And then, this melding with the makeup artists and understanding what people charge, what they book, and how they handle their business. And like I said, I have done a fair amount of coaching. I suppose everybody has when they do self-tapes and they help friends. Essentially, if it's an open channel of discussion, you get to coach that session. But before self-tapes were a big thing, a lot of my comedian friends knew I had an acting background and would come over and I'd whip them into shape, and I know what I'm doing. And I've worked with a working actor for an Amazon series that he was a lead on, and I really whipped him into shape, and not whipped him into shape, but it's like, again, I think I spoke about it, that, these are all the things that are acting career that still don't add up to being a household name. And so I guess I'm just sort of trying to notice the tendrils of assistance, the tendrils of what they call glimmers, instead of like you get behind a slowpoke and you start bashing your head against the windshield of like, why is this guy driving slow? And then as you start to have those negative spirals, then you start to have that quote unquote day from hell. And then you get to the supermarket and there's only one line open, and there's a line for self-checkout, which I hate. And then there's a Instacart person who's got 3 carts filled from, it's going to, and, every time I talk to the cashier's like, I'm getting paid whether I move fast or not. I've heard them say that. And you're like, you could just pile up on like, this is a shit day, and pile up on, I hate headshots, and pile up on, I'm just going to bring fucking clothes and I'm not going to think about it. And, instead of saying, hey, and nothing's free, but like, this guy really helped me out. My website's going to be better for it. It sucks that I have to lose what I was used to, but it may be a way to reemerge, to have a point of sale capability on the site, to put it out there that I am available for coaching, to take a lesson from these makeup artists who are smart. They're on file with this headshot studio. It can't be the only one that they're on file with. But if it's curated in any way, it wasn't a long list. So these are people who, and on down the line, and so they want to please that purveyor is a lead. If I ever want to do something with my real estate license, this is all the same muscle groups. These are all the same tactics and measures and steps to success. And similarly with acting is new pictures when required, new agent when you feel like you have to, keeping material up. And so another thing is that posting, making sure that this, I can tell right now I'm going to be scouring this episode for something clippable, and I don't know that I've had one, because I'm also in the moment speaking. And I probably, if I were editing this, I'd take out my OCD meltdown about, thinking someone had taken nothing except moved my parking permits. I mean, these are the things that go through an active mind. But I guess, there is hope this week, because I know I kind of took a dive in the AI minefield, but there is hope this week because of redirecting previous notions. And I still have a ways to go, and a lot of it has to do, I know social media has its drawbacks, but posting things, I had to dig in the crates for I didn't have to, but I was looking for material. I got a great I have a good friend that we sporadically communicate, and he remembered a bit of mine, and he saw a famous person kind of doing my bit, but more in a conversation. And he texted me and said, you should post your bit that's similar to his and then tag him. And I was like, that's a good idea. And so I had to go through some hard drives, and I tried to find the bit, and I had the bit up, but it was in a longer set. And then I watched the set back, and I'm like, not that I'm bombing, but you could hear chatter in the back of it wasn't an ideal set. So I didn't want to, you don't want to defame yourself. So I wanted to take his advice, but I couldn't find the bit with it going well. I mean, it goes well a lot, but it just didn't on this one I had. But through the process of digging through everything and trying out all these thumb drives and stuff, I found a set that I forgot all about, but was really good. And that bit wasn't on there, but the set was good. So I took the less subpar set down, put the better set up, and then I clipped something out that was pretty good, and it got a fairly good response online. And then, maybe it was these makeup artists. Maybe it was this whole energy of putting things out there that are, I'm basically trying to assist the conspiracy that has to happen for an actor to work. Is there has to be a momentum shift. There has to be a positive conspiracy of so many things happening at the same time, so many coincidences, or so many glimmers of hope, or glimmers, or whatever they call those, positive serendipity, and also people not being available, people not responding, people not, if somebody, who knows, if they never got back to me, I'd be stressed out and I'd be saying a different tune about, makeup artists. But like I said, I've always known hair and makeup people to be, they're the most employable, really. And then that's an interesting thing too, is because, let's not forget that those hard skills and those services are required a lot more than acting, because, we know how contracted the business is, and how, the same actors keep working and stuff. But to put yourself in line with these artisans, and to pick the headshots that are shot by, they have a lot of work. It's a lot of working actors shoot with these people. And I'm going for something specific, obviously, I'm not trying to have the makeup be that I'm going to sell myself as 33 years old. I can't do that anymore. It gets preposterous. I'm going to be in between haircuts. One of the reasons I like this person is they're a cosmetologist. They do hair and makeup. And if she needs to smooth out some flares, I'm sure she can. And we'll talk about that. And it's just, equipping yourself right. Like, what do they say in any of the trades? It's like the right tool is more important than anything. You can't, a ratchet set. You can't, you can't do it with a needle nose. You can't, you need a ratchet. And, there are equivalencies all on down the line in almost any field. And I guess I just want to take a little bit more of a methodical approach, or control the controllables, and feel better about what I'm putting out there, and not get in my own way, and not need it to be so survive or die kind of thing. And to be able to put stuff out there if I need to, but just to make me more searchable, make this conspiracy more likely, put Carl DeGregorio stuff out there a little bit more, which means also like being out in the world, meeting people. Like as soon as I start like making these shifts, this short film that's been kind of on the delay trip, it's been delay. This guy's trying to get that back on. And so it's just, and then things start popping up. A podcast, a buddy of mine has got a big, like, things start popping up on IMDb for you. And it's sort of, it's a new alignment I'm shooting for, and I can only say that, without empirical evidence. You can look stuff up and find out about me, but it's high time, and I guess I found ways to impede myself. I'm no longer going to do that because there's enough impediments to this business. I will say that I am up to the task. Seeing some of my old stand-up, I'm like, I could hang, and I'm that's still a tool in my toolbox. And if I think about what I would recommend, or what I would be a pitch for me as an acting coach, it's a toolbox. And everybody, you need the right tool for the right thing. And I know that there's Meisner, and there's Stanislavski based, and there's Stella Adler, and there's techniques, and there are adherents, but I think it requires a little bit of adaptability and different tools, and how could a technique that, what are they going to tell you about, what does Meisner have to tell you about posting on social media? Because that is a big tool in acting now. And maybe it shouldn't be that we can debate all that, but yeah, there's different tools. And I do think you can get, it's not one size fits all. Something might not get another, things may not make an actor light up, and that's all we're trying to do is find a way to light up, And you can stop it in its tracks by just saying, if the stuff isn't fun, then stop. I found a way to take all the joy out of it, and that's leave that up to corporations and middle management, like to take the joy out of things. I've said that the restaurant business used to be a very vis-a-vis if you worked in New York and it wasn't a corporate place, HR. It's like, everything up to a fist fight was sort of mediated by, you guys handle it, or on the individual strength or weakness of a manager who had the stones to resolve. HR gets involved and they start calling things a cocktail program, and all of a sudden it becomes homework. It becomes once a job where most of the people are there to survive, now becomes the career itself, and that is impressive, and we all had to do it, but it does take some of the joy out of it. And so, and I hear maybe that, but if you take the joy out of acting, or you take the joy out of music, or that's we're trying to repackage and project emotions out, so it has to be joyful. Even if it's a prison film where you're playing the bad guy, you're still in service of the story that ultimately leads to release of the prisoner or the Shawshank. You're in service of this stuff, and that's what I love about these makeup artists. They know they are in the service industry of the entertainment field. They're serving the actor, and they do it with such grace and humility. But that's what we as actors have to do also: grace and humility, present and sell ourselves, and pitch ourselves as pitchably useful to the story, so that, and this, it took me too long to realize it wasn't about being hugged and loved. It was about what they bring. And Robert Colt is who I studied with most recently, and he did instill that. And one of the, he said that to a lot of people, but I think he said certain things to me a lot too. And what, you have to be the actor what an actor they're going to get. And if you can't really feel that about yourself and your work and your wares, and why would you have a crummy headshot if you're a great actor? Because a great actor has to be brought to the market, and you want to say, I'm a great actor. Here I am in as viable a form as I can find my way to you, because I'm going to help you get your story across. And I think rather than have it be arrogant, just say, I know I can bring something to your story. If you think I'm right, I know I can rock. And so that's what, the funniest message is. And just seeing people being good, a good sales rep will change your day, change your life. That's no small thing, And that we're supposed to be in the business of that, to change someone's day, make someone's day. A good TV show, a good film, a good play, a good stand-up set will do more than make someone's day. So why aren't we? You got to channel that. And that guy made my day, and these makeup artists, even the ones I didn't hire, made my day. And then it's just, I guess it's just reflecting positivity. And as lame as that sounds, that's what I was sort of caught up in last week, not remembering. And so I remember it this week on the 95th desk session as we close in on a Hundog. And the song, oddly enough, this is where it gets good, is when the next song, I have no choice but to reveal it because of this format. Last week we had Piano in the Dark, which is a very respectable ballad that has imagery and pathos and a great melody and R&B from the 80s. Very tight, beautiful song. I hope you vibed out on it. And that'll be in this week's comments or in the description box. But this week is when these songs become embarrassing, and that is my gauge of pop music, is if you were caught jamming out to it, it would be embarrassing. Then that's a good song, because the exuberance, the energy, the cringe, being on the edge of cringe because it's so emotive. That's what I want from my music and my playlist, is a way to get out of my dull doldrums, get out of my dark woe, get out of my social media doom scrolling, to get out into, and good cardio music tends to be upbeat, and good cardio music or good walking music, or good vibe changing music. They say one of the best antidepressants is music, right? And these are all things that are in your ability to get in your ears is some good music. And to not be a Rolling Stone critic and only like dour, deep music. This won't even appear. This next song, it's Michael Sembello's Maniac from the Flashdance soundtrack. It's embarrassing that is a song I am touting, but that is a song that's made my all-time playlist on Apple Music. Because it's a vibe. It's just up tempo, and it's a goofy song about a steel town girl on a Saturday night, and I think it had a lot to do with the video, and had a lot to do with Jennifer Beals in my early development. But the song itself, with the chromatic scaling and the sort of key changes and just guitar solo and just the tempo, and I think it's an 808 that he's using, but it's got a disco beat. So yeah, Maniac by Michael Sembello. If there were ever a good cardio song, it's this, and it's definitely dated, but like I said, the algorithm keeps track of how many times I probably needed to pick me up and something to listen to on the treadmill. And so Michael Sembello, he's a paisan too. Maniac is the song, and I think that'll do it for this week. And good luck finding a clip out of this meander. But this was Death Session 95. It is I, Carl DeGregorio. Peace.